Hi everyone, my name's Josh and I'm a junior majoring in airport management. Today I'd like to talk about ground access and its role in the operations at airports. If you've ever traveled by airplane, of course you know that your journey began as soon as you left for the airport. Whether you drove, took transit, or even walked all the way, your ability to get to the airport was a critical step along in your trip. I know it's easy to imagine airports as being in their own echelon of the transportation network, higher than everything else, but indeed, airports are an important, while quite unique, connection in the broader multimodal transport sector. Ground access is what helps to facilitate that connection. I want to start out with an example. Does anyone know what airport this is? That's kind of a trick question because it's Orchard Place, which is now known as Chicago O'Hare. A lot has changed since then. Immediately noticeable is the lack of runways, taxiways, and terminal space at the airfield. Looking a bit closer, though, the inconspicuously simple ground access infrastructure is perhaps even more jarring. It was a simpler time, writes Bruce Marlin, who grew up in Des Plaines, Illinois. In the late 60s, it was possible to drive into the airport interior by way of the access road at the southern terminus of Mount Prospect Road. There was only one guard shack at the entrance to the bowels of O'Hare, and that was frequently unmanned. Whole carloads of us would caravan to the south side of the terminal, where we could howl with glee as we passed directly behind taxiing 707s and DC-8s and 727s, letting the jet wash pour through the open windows of my 1965 Chevy Impala, drinking beer no less. Now, I'm not exactly sure how true this is. Now, I'm not exactly sure how true this is, but the area he's referencing is likely this location, at what is currently an ostensibly guarded checkpoint at the southern terminus of Mount Prospect Road, on the northern end of the airport. Just please don't be getting any ideas. Fast forward to the present day, and O'Hare is one of the biggest, busiest airports in the world. 8 runways, a web of taxiways, 4 terminals, and still growing. The ground access facilities have also expanded significantly. Multiple highway connections, enough parking for the entire city, a people mover, shuttle buses, and a metro terminus. These improvements seem obvious but can be easily overlooked when compared to those that more directly affect airside operations, like the addition of a glamorous new terminal or new runways. These ground access improvements are key for the success of an airport, because of course, if people can't get to the airport, you end up with LaGuardia. I'm only kidding, but I do really think that's important to consider and embrace ground access opportunities as the airport grows. And I'm not the only one. The American Association of Airport Executives also recognize ground access facilities as an important part of the growth and development of an airport. They outline ground access facilities in their Certified Manager Module 2 as being perhaps part of a regional transportation network. It also includes on-airport circulation roadways and, of course, all roadway facilities. These are also included in the terminal area plan of the airport layout plan, which is, of course, a really important part of the airport management role and record keeping and forecasting. So, obviously, some important stuff. Again, forecasting is something that's useful and important for any expansion because when you want to expand, you need to have a reason to do it, and forecasting is understanding why you need to expand and doing it in a way that would be effective. But of course, it's not perfect because there's just no crystal ball. It's in the future, but you can still use trends to make a reasonable and educated guess. One way to do this is by using models, which take a bunch of factors and just manipulate the numbers in a way to understand how the variables interact with each other. This can be costly though, and they're quite inflexible, and of course they're not always accurate because things change that we just cannot foresee. The Airport Cooperative Research Program has published a report on ground access mode modeling, just to sort of as a sort of guide for going forth in modeling. Um, it also emphasizes ground access modeling as critical for airport planning, which of course makes sense. The report also highlights some issues with the forecasting for the ground access modes because typically travel by visitors is ignored, which is of course important, especially for an airport. Um, it can sometimes inaccurately represent ride-sharing services, which are ever growing, and there's no clear consensus on sort of a one-size-fits-all model, which makes sense because of all of the different methods and modes that you can use to get to the airport. Not every airport is going to have the same ones available, as highlighted by this chart, which just includes some of the airports that the report studied and whether they include these modes in their models for ground access facilities. Obviously, they're not going to include things that they don't think apply to them. So that can sort of lead to the very specific models that come out of this process. But I guess if you're interested in sort of data science and transportation planning, this may be something that you would find to be interesting in your career. So yeah, thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your semester and have a good one. Thanks.